it's good morning and welcome to today's John Child's lecture entitled Making It Work with Tim Gunn. For those of you who are new, our Don Luke Childs lecture series were established in memory of the late Reverend Don Luke Childs, who was educated at Portsmouth Abbey, then Portsmouth Priory School, graduating in 1957. Don Luke later returned to, actually Sandy Childs in those days, later returned to join our monastery. Don Luke was a very popular figure on campus. He taught history and Christian doctrine and was head of development and alumni affairs before dying unexpectedly in 1976 at the age of 36. Don Luke Child's lectures cover a range of topics and interests, all of which are meant to educate and enlighten our student body. Also, many of you know Don Luke's name from the Don Luke Child's Medal, which is awarded annually at our prize day to a graduating sixth form student. So now it's my great pleasure to be introducing to you Mr. Timothy Gunn, educator, author, television personality, and of course uncle to one of our most favorite house parents, Ms. Gundy. Mr. Gunn is best known as the on-air mentor to the designers competing on the Emmy Award-nominated reality television program Project Runway, which is filmed at Parsons, the new school for design in New York City. Mr. Gunn joined the faculty at Parsons in 1982 as assistant director of admissions, later serving as director of admissions and eventually associate dean of the school. Mr. Gunn is the author of two books, Tim Gunn's Guide to Style and Gunn's Golden Rules, Life's Little Lessons for Making It Work. I was particularly interested when I saw a 2007 piece on Mr. Gunn, which was featured on the cover of the New York Times Fashion and Style section, which was entitled The Headmaster of Fashion. So, Mr. Gunn, I'm very pleased to be welcoming you this morning.
Certainly one of my passions is working with young people and watching you have a kind of epiphany about who you are and who you can be and what you can achieve. And it's thrilling to be here with all of you. And it's thanks to my niece, Wallace Gundy, that I am here. So, and let me dispel any notions. They think Gundy, did he change his name? How did this happen? That my sister, Kim Gunn, married Wallace's father, James Gundy. So my sister is Kim Gundy. So that's how it all happened. I am a very lucky guy, and there are a lot of things I'd love to talk to you about. I know we're going to have a question and answer session a little later, but I wanted to use Gunn's Golden Rules, which I'm proud to say was a New York Times best-selling book. I mean, I was shocked, no one more than I, that it took off in that way. I wanted to use the book as a point of departure to talk to you about your responsibilities in life, your responsibilities for navigating the world with responsibility and with respect for yourself and for your fellow human beings. And the original premise for Gunn's Golden Rules was modern manners for the digital age. I live in New York City. I am bombarded with bad behavior every day. I observe it. I thankfully do all that I can to not participate in it, but I certainly observe it. And as technology has grown and evolved, and I celebrate the evolution of technology, and I don't want anyone to misunderstand, but our sidewalks were not meant for navigating with a BlackBerry or an iPhone while text messaging. The subway steps were not engineered in that way. Our vehicles weren't engineered that way. And I have witnessed this, how to describe it? I witnessed a kind of erosion, I guess I would say, of acknowledgement that we live in a society and culture that has a lot of people in it and that we're all interacting and that life is a big collaboration. I've just noticed this tendency to, for each individual metaphorical bell jar and stay there and not interact. So Gunsmoke Rules started out as a modern manners guide. And while I was writing it, I couldn't help but pepper it with lots of personal anecdotes, real things that I observed or that happened to me or that I was engaged in some way, to give it more flavor, to give it more reality in the manner of speaking, and to tell the story that I'm not just an observer of these things, and I'm not just talking about them academically, I'm talking about them from a real world experience. But I was very nervous about what publishers at Simon & Schuster would think about this evolution, this new iteration, and I nervously sent them a draft, and they loved it. In fact, they said, we want more anecdotes, we want more of your personal observations and experiences. The book has a lot of stories that fit into the category of don't let this happen to you. It also has stories that I find to be very inspirational. And I wrote it with precisely you in mind. It would have been so easy to go off on a rage against bad behavior and just have the entire book filled with denouncements, but I wanted it to be educational, inspirational, and I wrote it as though I were talking to young people in my offices, and specifically in my offices at Parsons, where I was chair of the Department of Fashion Design for the last 7.5 years that I was there. And at the very core of the book is what I believe is the most important message of all, and it is the following. And it may be controversial among you, a little provocative, I hope it is. I hope it stirs up some dialogue. At the core of the book is this message. No matter how much strife, consternation, anger, frustration you're dealing with and you're feeling, no matter how much, take the high road. Take the high road. Don't send the angry email. I'm not saying you can't write it. You can write it, that can be very purging and cathartic. Don't send it. The text message to someone you're perturbed with, don't send it. Sit on it. I have to say, from my experience, and I could be everybody's great-grandfather, I admit that. From my experience, whenever I've acted out in that manner, I've regretted it. I have never, ever, ever regretted taking the high road. It's something that I know stirs up emotion in people. I've got to get this out. I've got to get this out of my system. There are things I need to say. Sit on it. Just sit on it, whatever it may be. I will add this codicil, though. If the high road gets so high that you break out with a nosebleed, get off it. That's the moment when there's something you need to confront. And I've been there too. I've been in the nosebleed territory where I thought, wait a minute, I can't keep getting higher because this isn't good for my health. So it's very, very important to do that. I also want to talk to you about make it work, which it's the craziest thing that's become a catchphrase because I've been using the term in my classrooms forever. And it comes from the following. Most of the classes that I taught were very product-oriented. There was an outcome at the end of the semester. It wouldn't even have to be the end of the semester, maybe the end of 2 weeks. But there was an outcome. There was something physical, three-dimensional to present. And I found with many of my students that if a project isn't going well, rather than struggling with how to make it right, how to correct it, there was a much stronger tendency to just let go of it altogether and start all over, to start from scratch. And I observed this for a few semesters of teaching, and it unnerved me, and it unnerved me for the following reason. If you just abandon the project and start anew, and everything's going well, fine, in a manner of speaking, but what have you really learned? You've learned, okay, I was correct to abandon it because this is a good project, I like it. But what did you learn from the errors of what just happened? This is what's at the core of making it work, that we take a situation situation that is going awry, it's not going well, we offer up a diagnosis for what the issues really are. What's wrong with this? Why isn't it working? And then we offer up a prescription for how to make it work. And it's in the process of developing that. Well, it's in the whole process. It's in the whole analytical, critically analytical process of figuring out what's wrong that then allows you to figure out how to fix it. And then it gives you resources for moving forward. And I say this about design projects all the time, but it's also true in life. I tell myself to make it work every day. It's not over a design project. It may be over a schedule that's where there are conflicting appointments and or motivations for certain people meeting with you about certain things, and it can stir up conflicts. So making it work is really very, very important. And it's a life lesson. It's more than just a mantra in a design room. Though with project runway designers, I have to say, they really have to make it work, because there's no way they can start from scratch all over again. We're not going back to move the shop. We're not going to have a new design precinct to present. These are the existing conditions. It's the here and now. And they really do have no time. I mean, I know you hear me say you have until midnight tonight. That's true time. I mean, nothing is padded. There's nothing behind the scenes. It's all very real. So they make it work every day. Another one of my golden rules, there are many of them, is the world owes you nothing. It owes you absolutely nothing. I find that I encounter so many young people in particular who have a profound sense of entitlement. They think just because of X, Y, and Z, they're entitled to X, Y, and Z. This happened to me with my students at Parsons. I would always trust that they're very talented, intelligent, and for the most part quite motivated. And I would say that these are conditions that I simply accept uniformly. How you ascend or descend from this benchmark is completely up to you, and in many ways it's up to your qualities of character, how you choose to act on certain decisions, certain behaviors, how you choose to move forward. And I say this by way of example because I would have too many students who, upon the cusp of graduation, would say, well, I'm not going to work for that designer. I don't want to do that particular job. I'm not interested in anything other than being an assistant designer. I would never consider doing technical specs for a factory overseas. I'm too good for that. To which I would say, get a job. I don't care what the job is. You'll learn from it. You'll do everything. You should do everything at 150 or 200% and prove yourself worthy of more responsibilities. I was at Starbucks in Times Square, and I share this anecdote in my book. And there was a young woman in front of me in line who was getting coffee orders for, I don't know, a dozen people at Vogue magazine, Condé Nast. And she was woeful about it. Look what I have to do. I have this job, and I thought it would be giving me a lot of responsibility. And here I am at Starbucks getting coffee for these people. To which I said, get the coffee with the most style and aplomb that you possibly can. Bring it back with a fervor and a relish. Have the people for whom you're getting the coffee believe that no one has ever delivered them coffee in this way before, this manner of respect and pride, and wait and see what happens to you. You're going to make a lasting impression upon people. They will remember this, as opposed to sort of being schlumped over and coming in with a little cardboard container and handing coffee out, as though you are a server or a servant. No, this is a responsibility. Accept it and rise to the occasion. And I hope that she listened to me, and I hope that today she's an assistant editor. She may very well be. So the world, in fact, does owe you it's so important for you to make your own place in the world. And one of the things I want to say about the potential in each and every one of you, and I'm projecting because this has happened to me. I made certain assumptions about my life's path. I, in a manner of speaking, could draw a linear line and predict, according to my own wants and desires, the various benchmarks in my life and what I would achieve and where I would be at a certain point. What I want you to know is that life is not necessarily this straight linear path. In fact, it can be very serendipitous. It can take you places you wouldn't dream you would ever go. And it's filled with opportunities, huge opportunities. And one of the wonderful things about the world today is it's not a prescriptive world. Speaking as the great-grandfather here, I think back to the 1970s, the 1980s, even into the mid-1990s. And life was more of a prescription. You could, in many ways, predict your path and follow it. And what's wonderful about the world today is it's an innovative, creative incubator. And you're all part of it. You're all in the incubation process. And you're growing, you're evolving. And with each successive increment of growth, a whole new opportunity presents itself. Nothing gets me more excited than being with young people like you, because you are the future. You're going to determine what this world becomes. And there's no greater responsibility, there's no greater joy to, and there's nothing more fun than this. And you should be having fun. You should be working hard. You should be learning new things every day. I certainly do. It's one of the things I love about life. But you should also be enjoying it. If it's just a horrible, daunting burden, well, it's not very joyous, is it? And I know that your studies here are difficult and demanding. At the same time, when you think about the opportunities presented here at Portsmouth Abbey School, I mean, it's how lucky are all of you. I mean, truly, incredibly lucky to have this quality of education and to have these resources. But I go back to the world owes you nothing. Being here does not give you a sense of entitlement. And while, yes, it may open certain doors, I would say this about Parsons School of Design. Yes, it may open doors, but unless you're prepared to cross that threshold and be commanding and inspiring and charismatic in how you engage with people, that door will close just as quickly. So it's on your head. It's on your head. I hope I'm not scaring anybody, but I hope I'm scaring everybody in a manner of speaking. It's hugely important. So Gunsmoke Rules is a kind of morality tale, or it consists of a lot of morality tales. And I will also share with you, though it was a bestseller, it also received a lot of backlash. I received a lot of backlash because people felt that I told some stories that perhaps weren't very appropriate. One of which concerned a certain editor of a certain fashion magazine. It was Anna Wintour and its Vogue. Do you all know who Anna Wintour is? Yes? Are any of you in agreement with me that she's one of the meanest, most unfriendly people ever placed on this planet? Yes? All right, we're in agreement. She's only in my book because of a certain rule. And the rule in this case is accept responsibility for your actions. I was asked by a reporter what the one thing I've seen in fashion is that I can never forget. And I said without hesitating, I said, no, that's easy. It was watching Anna Wintour being carried down 5 flights of stairs from a fashion show. What do you mean? Well, it was the Metropolitan Pavilion on West 18th Street. This is an adjunct space to the centerpiece, which was a fashion, New York Fashion Week, which then was Hyde Park, it's now Lincoln Center. But I knew she would be attending the show was Peter Son, one of her favorite designers. And I was there with colleagues from Parsons, and there is one elevator. And she does not ride an elevator with mere mortals. So only she and her bodyguards are permitted into an elevator. Well, it's on the 5th floor. How many people are going to climb the stairs? At any rate, I went to the show. I wasn't standing room, where I'm more than happy to be. And I really liked this particular standing room because I had a clear view of her. She was right there. And when the show was ending, I thought, how is she getting out of here? Well, the 2 huge bodyguards on each side of her got up with her. They went towards a big open staircase you could see all the way down to the 1st floor. The 2 bodyguards made a fireman's lock. She hopped onto it, and they whooshed her down the stairs. And I ran to the window because I wanted to know whether they put her down on the sidewalk or take her right into the car that way. They took her into the car. So, isn't that pretty unforgettable? So, this article appeared on it's a blur, it's this big. It appeared on a Sunday. On Monday, I'm in my office, and I'm told that Miss Wintour is on the phone. Oh my God. So I took deep breaths as I am now, just thinking about it brings them all back. And I picked up the phone, and I said, hello, Miss Wintour. And there was a gentleman on the other end, Patrick O'Connell. He said, no, this is Patrick O'Connell. I'm the head of communications for Vogue. Miss Wintour would like to speak to you. All right, may I ask what it's about? He said, yes, it's about the article that appeared in yesterday's paper. Fine. So I wait. She does not get on the phone. He comes back and he says, sorry, she's still in her meeting. And I wanted to do everything possible to avoid talking to her. So I asked him if he could give me any more details. And he said, yes, she wants you to retract the statement that you made. I said, retract it? That would imply that it's not true. It's absolutely true. Now you might be asking yourselves, why didn't I take the high road? This was my, well, I don't believe in telling falsehoods. I mean, I'm very transparent. And you know the wonderful thing is about the truth? You don't have to remember what you said. It's true. Even my mother said to me, when all this phenomenal stuff happened with Project Runway, it was after I turned 50, she said, why are you telling people your real age? I said, why? Why wouldn't I? And then it turned out that she hadn't been telling people my real age. So, at any rate, back to this Vogue story. So I said, I won't retract it. And he said, well, she maintains that it didn't happen. And I said, you know, this had transpired a year earlier. I keep a diary, and it's very detailed, and I can tell you it was September 9th, it was noon, Metropolitan Pavilion, Peter Son show, and with each successive declaration of fact and proof, he would be on the other end saying, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. So these calls went back and forth for 3 days, and I was having sleepless nights, I wasn't eating, it was making me rather ill. And there was another call during which he said, we've been talking about this in the office, and this was the exact quote, I'll have you know that Miss Wintour knows how to work a Manolo. What? What do you mean? She could take those 5 flights of stairs in her Milano Blahnik shoes. I said, I'm not implying that she couldn't have taken the stairs. The issue here was speed. She wanted to get out of there quickly. That's all that it was. I said, I never went after her character. I never called her a slow stepper. I never said that she was a diva and had to be lifted because her feet couldn't touch the ground. It was speed that was motivating this entire thing. So then I added, if you want an apology from me, I'll give you one. It will be the following. I apologize for implying she doesn't know how to work a Manolo. So it kept going on, and I couldn't take it any longer. So I called my florist, and I sent a huge bouquet of all white flowers. And of course, I'm thinking white is peace, white is harmony, and then I realized, well, in some cultures, white is death. And actually, I didn't mind that degree of ambiguity. And I wrote a personal note about how I hope that, in fact, I never intended to upset you with this, and please be assured, blah, 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 blah. And never heard anything, and I figured no news was good news. And going back to it, I mean, again, from a perspective of some distance, it was all about the fact that she wouldn't accept responsibility for her behavior. She did this. Oh, the best part was, and this is really what caused it all to stop, I had another member of the fashion industry, actually the executive director of the Council of Fashion Designers of America, was in my office, came for a meeting in my office when this whole thing was transpiring with Patrick O'Connell and Vogue. And he looked at me and asked, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "Why do I look as bad as I think I do?" He said, "Yeah, you look really awful." And I told him the story. He said, "I was there. I witnessed the whole thing. I saw it too." So he got on the phone, called Patrick, and said, "Look, I saw the same thing Tim Gunn saw, so get off the case." And that was, in a way, the end of it all, which was very nice. So, also in the Accept Your Responsibility for Your Actions chapter, there's another Vogue story. Do you all know the former editor-at-large, Andre Leon Talley? He really is editor-at-large. He's bigger than life. And this is a man who received an honorary degree, and ever since has been wearing an academic robe. I don't quite understand it. I was moderating a panel discussion at the New York Public Library on fashion and popular culture. And the panelists were Timothy Greenfield Sanders, the photographer, Martha Nelson, the head of the People Group, and Andre Leon Talley. So I don't go anywhere with an entourage. I don't believe in it. I think there's something repugnant about it. And I like being a self-cleaning oven or a frost-free freezer, as I call myself. Mr. Talley arrived with no fewer than 11 people. Though I will say, one of them I was very happy to meet. I had never met Patrick O'Connell. And this was a full year after this Vogue incident. And I was afraid that that white flower arrangement had been hurled at his head and that he was in a coma somewhere. But in fact, he was alive and well. And a lovely guy. I was happy to meet him. So the head of public programming at the New York Public Library announces to me and the three panelists that we're going to have a sound check, a mic check, to which Mr. Talley says, "I don't do mic checks." Oh, excuse us. All right. So we go off, do the mic check, we come back to the green room, and I can't make this stuff up. He is reclining on a sofa covered with a translucent plastic barber bib, being fed cheese, cubes, and grapes individually by an assistant. I thought, where does your own diva-dom, where does it go? Where does it reach a point where you allow yourself to be fed? You're not in a hospital bed. There's nothing wrong with your appendages. When does this happen? I was incredulous. I was fascinated, but I was incredulous. So we're all watching this, trying not to look at each other. And then we're told that it's time for the symposium to start. And Mr. Talley makes a declaration. It's not a question, it's a declaration. The declaration being, the room has been cleared. And it's a room the size of this one with about as many people in it. The room has been cleared? Cleared of what? Cleared of people. What are you talking about? I refuse to walk down the center aisle when there are people seated. I mean, I can't imagine why, but it's something to speculate. And the head of public programming, who was a lovely, wonderful guy, said, the room has been cleared. We can't clear it. There's no place to put everyone. I mean, it's standing room only. And he said, well, again, I will not walk down a center aisle, to which I couldn't take it any longer. I had not been participating in this. I've merely been observing it. I got off the high road, and I said, had you gone for the mic check, you would have realized there is a stage door. No one's walking down a center aisle. No one. So off we go. And it's very interesting. You can hear there's an audio, what is it? Anyway, an audio podcast of the whole seminar online on the New York Public Library site, and you can hear Mr. Kelly making these pronouncements, and you can hear the audience getting really angry at him. I loved it. But at the same time, I and the other panelists felt a responsibility to step in and make certain amendments or corrections or mediate some of the things that were being said because they were so outrageous, especially about any body type that isn't a woman who's 7.5 feet tall, weighs 22 pounds. It just didn't figure into his whole vocabulary, and we know that that's one of the many really serious issues today with the whole fashion industry. At any rate, accept responsibility for your actions. I say this about dressing all the time also. I know that there are people, and there are probably people here today who think, oh, fashion, clothes, they're so unimportant, they're so ephemeral. Well, ephemeral they are. They're not going to last forever, that's for sure. But they're inconsequential, and it's shallow to be concerned with such things. And to everyone, I say, think about semiotics, messages. The clothes we wear send a message about how the world perceives us. Like it or not, it's simply a fact. When someone you don't know walks into a room, what's the first thing you notice about them? You probably acknowledge their gender. The second thing, though, is how they're dressed, and you start making certain assumptions about them. Good, bad, or indifferent. We all do it. So for me, fashion, clothing, actually, I'm going to make a distinction between fashion and clothes, but fashion, or the whole manner of presentation, head to toe, is really critically important. The distinction that I want to make between fashion and clothes is the following, and this comes from teaching design. Clothes never need to change. Clothes can be the same forever and ever and ever. Fashion, when we use that term, by definition it needs to change, because fashion, like all good design, it happens in a context. It's a context that's societal, cultural, historic, economic, and political. And since all of those variables and components are changing all the time, fashion changes, design changes. Yes, we stumble upon, or we revere, classic items, items that really don't change or don't change very much. Think about a classic blazer, for instance. Think about the monastic dress. Father Damien and I were talking about it this morning. Does it need to change? No. I mean, it's semiotics. As I said, the clothes you wear send a message about how you're perceived. That perception is everlasting, and I think it's a strong and powerful thing. So, on the lines of accepting responsibility for your actions, we all need to accept responsibility for what we wear. I always say I do not stand in judgment of people. Wear whatever you want to wear as long as you accept responsibility for it. Truly. And I also say, don't ever make assumptions about anyone and start hurling criticisms. That person on the street who's dressed like a circus clown may be. They may be. I have a very Socratic approach to any kind of critique or critical assessment. I say it's Socratic because it's a Q&A. I'm going to pummel you with questions, and because I need information from you. Is this what you wear all the time? What do you do? With whom do you interact? How do you feel about what you're wearing? So it's very, very important. Never assume and accept responsibility for what you're wearing. I think we should segue into Q&A.
That's great.
Okay? So, Mrs. Stark, is there any procedural way of doing this?
No, if people could just speak up. If you
Right.
have a question, you raise your hand.
You may ask me anything. I can't promise I can answer, but you can ask me anything. Surely there's a question. Someone must have a Project Runway question. Yes? What's it like to work with Heidi Klum? I pinch myself every day I'm on the set with her. And it's because I can't believe I'm working with Heidi Klum. All you need to know about Heidi in terms of how lovely and kind and warm she is that every crew member, loves working with her. She's never late, there's not a deepest bone in her body. She's intensely respectful of everyone, and crew members do not suffer fools gladly. No, Heidi's a gem. She's a real doll. You can just stand and assert yourself.
Who's your favorite designer?
Who's my favorite designer in fashion or Project Runway?
Fashion.
In fashion? You know, I have a serious respect for longevity in this industry because there's so many people who are just supernovas. They're bright and wonderful, and then they go away. For me, it's Diane von Furstenberg, and it's because she had a very seminal design in the wrap dress. It seems so basic and simple. Well, if it was so basic and simple, why didn't somebody else do it before she did? I mean, in a manner of speaking, it does go back to ancient Greece, but in her own Diane von Furstenberg iteration. And she's been in the industry for almost 40 years, and she's the president of the Council of Fashion Designers of America, so she has a profound leadership role. And she and I have been working very closely together to put before Congress a bill that will give intellectual property to fashion designers in this nation. It may surprise you to know that we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't grant intellectual property to its fashion designers, and I have a theory about it. No one comes out and says this, but I have a theory about it. It's because we began as a nation of copiers. We would copy fashion in Europe. Other than what was happening in Hollywood beginning in the mid-teens of the last century, there was really nothing innovative or creative happening in this country. It was all about copying Europe. So we didn't have a need or certainly a desire to have design piracy laws in place because we would all be breaking those laws. So it wasn't until World War II, when the couture houses in Paris all closed, that you really begin to see American fashion design ascending, percolating. There's innovation, there's creativity, particularly with two very important designers, Claire McCardle, who's attributed with having really invented American sportswear. She took all the boning and porcelain out of clothes. And with Norman Norell, who is more on the evening wear end and very tailored and structured clothes. But that was the beginning. So it makes sense that we wouldn't want design piracy rules in place. So I've spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill talking about a lot of fashion disasters. Now people go running for me down the halls of the Capitol saying, "I didn't know you were coming, don't look at me." To which I say, "You're an elected official. You're a spokesperson, an ambassador for your constituents. Don't you feel a responsibility to present yourself in the world in a certain way?" Well, of course, they just slammed their door. But at any rate, we're making headway. But it is a bit of a conundrum that this great nation has absolutely no laws in place to prevent design piracy. So anything that you see anywhere in any store, legally, you can copy it stitch by stitch, and it's perfectly legal. A little scary. All right, someone else? Yes? I'm sorry? What's a Manolo? A Manolo Blahnik? Manolo Blahnik is a very expensive high-end brand of women's shoes. They're very pointy stilettos. They can hurt you, which is why Miss Wintour chooses to wear them. Yes?
You proposed that life is not a linear path, but rather sort of a winding journey. So I'm interested to know how you have managed to negotiate various decisions from one point to another in your journey.
That's a very thoughtful question, thank you. You know, my decisions haven't always been good. I mean, but I learn from them. I mean, this is why whenever anyone ever says to me that they wish they were 20-something again, and they're my age, I'm 58, I say I wouldn't go backwards for anything. I am so grateful for each day of successive learning and knowledge, because not only do you learn what to do, you learn what not to do. You will be, and I'm sure you already have been, and you will continue to be, as I have been, and hopefully will continue to be. You'll be presented with thresholds. They may be, it may be a single door, it may be 2 pass or 3 pass, and there are decisions to be made. It's like the Yellow Brick Road. Is that right? The Yellow Brick Road. Yellow Brick Road, sorry. The Yellow Brick Road. Which way do you go? And you need to be thoughtful and strategic in the decisions that you make. I don't believe, and sometimes you just need to be intuitive. Sometimes that's all that it takes. And I'm all for taking risks. I'm a big risk-taking guy. It's certainly what I did at Parsons. It's what I did with the fashion design curriculum and the pedagogy of the department. It's what I've done with a lot of my life. And when you take risks, there's that great unknown. I mean, it's a bit like jumping off a cliff, and will you land on a nice fluffy pillow of a cloud, or will there be sharp stones below you? At the same time, if you just stay within a little safe haven, I think life becomes a pretty dull place. And just in terms of your own personal advancement and realizing your own potential, I think it's so easy to stagnate. At the same time, the risk-taking has to take place at times when, I won't say you're comfortable with it, because I don't think we're ever comfortable with it, but when you feel the courage to really embrace the risk. And I know I'm talking broadly and somewhat abstractly about this, but it's important to do. Does that somewhat answer the question? Good, great, thank you. Yes?
What's your biggest fashion no-no?
My biggest fashion no-no?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of an item of apparel, it is the following. It is the dropped crotch pants. Who looks good in this? It looks like there's an incontinence issue. But generally speaking, the most prevalent fashion foible is fit. And that is wearing clothes that are too big for you or too small for you. I'm always saying the key to getting your fashion right has to do with 3 fairly abstract, fairly intangible elements: silhouette, proportion, and fit. And those particulars are different on each of us because we're all shaped differently. We all have different proportions. Some of us are long-waisted, some of us are short-waisted. Length of arms, breadth of shoulders relative to hips. But when silhouette, proportion, and fit are in harmony and balance, you look great no matter what you're wearing. That's the key. Yes?
You said before, kind of like this question, that you used to be able to draw a linear line of where you saw yourself. How did where you saw yourself, like when you were younger, differ from where you ended up?
How did it differ? Night and day. I mean, you would never have told me that I was going to be a career teacher. I hated school. I hated the whole experience. I was the most miserable student. I loved learning. I hated the social aspects. I hated the interaction with my peers. I hated sports. I hated all of it. So for you to tell me, oh, you're going to be teaching, and eventually you're going to be the head of a big academic program. Don't be ridiculous. That's never going to happen. So you just don't know. And I think one of the reasons why I love teaching so much and why I will say immodestly that I became a good teacher is because I had wonderful faculty from whom I learned, and I emulated them and their particular qualities of nurturing that I really profoundly believe in. And I mean, you're each an individual. As I said, I feel the same way about you that I felt about my students at Parsons. I make certain assumptions about you. You're smart, you're motivated, you're go-getters. You have aspirations, you have ambitions. And who wouldn't want to help nurture that and help be part of that? It's a sacred trust as far as I'm concerned, and it's one that I take very, very seriously. Yes?
What was your first job in the fashion industry?
Well, my first job was chair of the fashion program at Parsons. And people always ask me, how did you get, or what motivated you to get involved in this? Fashion came after me. I mean, it was really in my role as associate dean that I took over the fashion program for what was intended to be a year. As Mr. Fix-It, as someone who's going in to make it work, to diagnose and prescribe. And it ended up being a 7.5-year, almost 8-year gig for me. And I had to learn an enormous amount about the industry. And I had to also learn about, I mean, talking about semiotics, I had to learn about me and how I wanted to present myself to the world. I had been wearing my very boxy, oversized suits that I would wear downtown, because the fashion program of Parsons is separate from the rest of Parsons, which Parsons is down in the village, and the fashion department is in the middle of the garment district. And it was actually a meeting with Diane Von Furstenberg, who I've known for a very long time, but she had never met with me when I was chair of this program. She had only met with me as a faculty member and as associate dean. And I could tell by how she was looking at me in my office, it's like, this is not good enough. You need to look more modern. And I had to search within myself about how do I want to present myself to the world. And at any rate, it was a very long, long learning curve. And it changed my life considerably. Other questions? Yes, this young man right here.
A lot of people say that when you give advice to contestants on Project Runway, that they don't take your advice the way you put it, so therefore your advice isn't the best. What do you think of that?
That they don't take my advice, or that my advice isn't the best?
The latter.
Well, I always tell the designers that they need to own responsibility for their own decision making. I'm there as an outside observer, an outside voice, to offer what it is that I see from my own experience. I want their brain to be armed with my comments, and in particular, if the judges call them out on something related to what we've discussed, I don't want them to feel ambushed or derailed. I just want it to be in their head. I would never, one thing I don't do with the designers is tell them what to do, because it's not my work. And I'm not the designer. I wasn't the catalyst for the concept. And I just take it as being very matter of fact. So they're welcome to say my advice was terrible. Sometimes they actually do on camera. But I'm just as quick to say, it's your decision, it's not mine. And what you don't hear a lot of, or don't see a lot of, or hear a lot of on the show is the other designers giving the designers feedback. And in the case of last season, season 8, the winner of the season would follow me while I was doing the critiques. As soon as I would leave one designer, she would be at that designer's workplace telling that designer what I said that was wrong. And I thought, well, aside from being really inappropriate and obnoxious, if you want to do this, do it. So I'm not a control freak, and I figure things fall where they may, and things happen for a reason. Yes?
What do you think is more fashionable, a normal tie or a bow tie?
The normal tie versus the bow tie? I mean, I own both. It's a matter of taste. It's a matter of how you're feeling that particular day. I mean, a bow tie is a little more jaunty. This sort of tie can be viewed as being a little more conservative. Listen, I'm just grateful you all are wearing ties, let me tell you.
What's your favorite thing about working on Project Runway?
What's my favorite thing about working on Project Runway? My interaction with the designers. Yeah, I just have such respect for them, and I never know where they're going to take a project, which is thrilling. And they constantly wow me. When I consider what they need to achieve and in the time frame that they need to achieve it, and the fact that they're really working alone, it's remarkable, and it's an inspiration for me. Yes?
We know all about your public life, but what do you do when you're not on TV or working?
What do I do when I'm not on TV or working? There are no moments. There are no moments. I mean, I have very little free time, to be perfectly honest. In fact, between now and December 24th, I have one day off. So I'm not complaining. I'm a very lucky guy. It's a high-class problem. But I don't have a lot of free time. It's true. And I will say, though, I scheduled my fall around this date. So. One or two more questions? This gentleman right here.
What's the worst outfit you've ever seen?
What's the worst outfit I've ever seen? I'll put it in a general category of outfit, in a general category of context. It's seeing sweatsuits in places like theaters or churches or higher-end restaurants. I don't understand it. I have a refrain which is, on the whole topic of dressing for comfort in a sweatsuit, if you want to dress to feel as though you never got out of bed, don't. Stay in. We'll go towards the back.
What is the most important part for design? Shape, structure, color, or inspiration?
What's the most important aspect of design? Shape, structure, color, or inspiration? It's all of it. Though I will say this, unless as a designer you have something to say, you have something to express, unless you have a polemic, a concept, then don't say it. Because, I have absolutely no disrespect for seamstresses. We can't live without them. But there's a difference between being a fashion designer and being a dressmaker. And the dressmaker executes the dress. It's something that probably already exists. It's not going to be an innovative, creative item. The fashion designer is responsible for the concept. So when people say, I'm a fashion designer, but in fact what they're really doing is making clothes, I beg to differ. There really is there's a difference. As is true with any design field. There's a difference between being someone who's building a house and someone who's actually designed it. And the two parties need each other. I mean, life, design, everything. It's a big collaboration. I can think of very few things that are just a solo activity. So it's a big collaboration, and it requires a lot of different parties coming at it from a lot of different points of view.